Madam Chair and County Management, we are now live.
Okay, thank you. We're now back in open session, and I will entertain a motion to approve the closed session minutes for March 15th, 2021.
Yes,
moved.
Madam. I would like to make a motion to approve our closed session minutes from March 15th of 2021.
I
Second.
second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and second that our closed session minutes for March 15th be approved. Are you ready for the question? Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am. And this motion will be combined for approval of the minutes as well as roll call.
Yes.
Chairwoman
Yes,
Floyd,
that's right.
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Both motions passed unanimously.
All right, thank you. We'll now move to item 7, presentation, budget presentation by Scott and Brian.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We are back on the regular agenda now. So for tonight, we are presenting to you the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 21-22. Before you should have the PowerPoint printed version of it, as well as the additional binder that has additional information in it. The binder has backup information that backs up the slides. Sometimes it's larger information, sometimes it's expanded information. In the back of the binder, you've got the schedule for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You've got the associated PowerPoint presentations for each day that go along with each day. So the first slide, if we can put that up. Okay, is just displaying, this can display largest we can get it on the screen for the commissioners to see. They see the full screen. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So your priorities, these have remained unchanged. These were affirmed by you as a board back at your CIP workshop first of the year. I don't need to read these out. We know what they are. You affirmed them, and these guide us in the budget process. Guiding principles on the next slide. As normal, the requests were evaluated against the board's goals and priorities. We have a balanced budget with revenues meeting expenditures. We're using fund balance as a normal plug for what I'm calling reoccurring needs. And we continue with the base budget plus sufficient funds this year for a number of one-time expenditures via fund balance. We're going to talk about those as we get along with this presentation. I did want to note that Brian Barnett and I will be playing tag team with this presentation. He will go over some parts of it and I'll do the balance. So on the next slide, for the recommended budget for all funds, general fund plus all the different operating funds, currently in the current fiscal year, you have almost a $260 million overall operating budget for the entire organization. For 21-22, that jumps to $281,464,116. This includes one-time building projects that we are proposing to be cash funded and not borrow and incur interest charges on, and we'll discuss those in detail. So overall, amongst all the funds, you have a 8.3% increase. If you were to take out the the one-time projects, it would be pretty much a normal 3.76% increase. Again, we'll get into details of this. Next slide, tax rate. Current tax rate is 68.91. I'm recommending a decrease in the rate of half a penny to 68.41. And if you'll look on page 6 in your binder, we give you a tax rate population history of Pitt County. We've had a few instances where the tax rate has been adjusted, whether through a reevaluation or through just basically an adjustment in the rate due to needs. Those have been not frequent. They have occurred through the last 20, 21 years. And you can see those as you go through. There's probably about 6 times maybe. On the next slide, the recommended budget for the general fund being the overall fund that really drives the ad valorem tax rate. The request from all the departments was over $198 million. Myself and staff, Brian Barnett, and the finance staff drove those requests down $4.7 million. We did include 2 building projects. One would be the Sheriff's Administration office building. Second would be a DSS expansion at the Human Services Center. Each project $6 million, $12 million total. We are recommending those be cash funded with no borrowing and using excess fund balance that we will discuss as we move along. Proposed budget is $205,936,044 compared to the adopted budget. If you look at the percent change, it would be 12.93%. Take out the one-time projects and you're to a 6.35% increase in the budget. In terms of revenue review, if I can spit the words out, you will see a pie chart on the next slide showing your revenue sources, your major revenue source being ad valorem taxes. Second normally comes in sales tax, and you see the other revenues as identified. So revenues, this table here for all funds shows the amount of money per revenue source, again, whether ad valorem taxes, intergovernmental, sales and service, interest, and so forth. If you'll go down to the fund balances appropriated, you see that is $19,369,686, which is a large amount of money. Again, $12 million of that is for these 2 building projects we're recommending to proceed with, and we will explain where we landed on that big of an amount of money in fund balance to get to these projects. Then you have your interfund transfers, which again includes that 12 million in there. Your next slide. So again, the recommended rate, 68 cents, 68.41 cents. This is based upon a tax base estimate based upon $15.1 billion. That's about $500 million, a little greater than $500 million over the current year. It's a 3.95% increase in the base, and that's as we have concluded the reevaluation last year. The base continues to grow even after we have done a reevaluation. Proposed changes in terms of the fees, we have very limited changes in here. One is due to a court order to reduce the charges for sexually oriented business ordinance. In terms of a business license application fee, we're proposing to reduce that from $1,000 to $500. The other is an increase at the solid waste and recycling for shingles tipping fee. We're proposing to go from $6 to $10. Our current contractor, as I recall the conversation, will no longer be hauling the shingles for us. We now have to incur the cost to haul those to that operator. Thus, this increased cost per ton will allow us to recoup some of those transportation costs. So that concludes the fee changes. I'm going to now turn it over to Brian to talk about fund balance, which is probably where most of attention and focus in terms of follow-up will be. Brian?
Good evening, Madam Chair and Board of Commissioners. So on our fund balance slides, just to reiterate, our fund balance is our savings account. One of its main focuses is to help us throughout the year. As you guys know, when you're looking at property taxes, the bulk of that money comes in basically in 2 phases. One in the late summer, early fall. And then again, as the calendar year turns is when we get our 2 largest amounts of money from property tax. So our fund balance is what we use as a cash flow standpoint to keep us afloat all fiscal year. We do utilize fund balance for our one-time opportunities and emergencies. This particular budget is looking at a couple of opportunities that we've talked about on our capital improvement plan. We're looking at looking at our fund balance to help cash fund these particular projects. The two main ones being the DSS building and the Sheriff's Administrative Building. This will allow us an opportunity to avoid having to go out and borrow the money, which is the last bullet point where our fund balance is evaluated by the rating agencies, and it does help us with interest rates. So this particular budget is looking at using that fund balance to cash fund these particular two projects over the next, and it's probably going to be a 2-year period, just knowing how it takes to go out and get bids and to design the buildings and to actually construct them. But we're looking at fund balance to help with those two particular projects. Just so you also reiterate the fact that you all have a stated goal of 18 to 20% of our fund balance compared to our general fund expenditures. We do look at a group of peer counties just to see where we stack up in this particular year. When we look at how the fiscal year ended at 2020, June 30th, 2020, our peer counties were roughly had 33% was their fund balance percentage compared to general fund. I will point out, which is going to be on our next slide, you will see that 33% is up about 4.6% from FY19. So as you can see, fund balance across the state is growing. So we're not the only county in this particular situation. And then lastly, with fund balance, we do try to limit the amount of times that we tap into fund balance for those reoccurring operational expenses, because we don't want to become accustomed to having to use fund balance to keep those expenses going. I know the numbers on here are probably a little hard to see on the screen, but you do have them in front of you. As you can see from 2013, which is one of our lowest fund balance percentages, up until where we estimate 2020 to end. By utilizing fund balance to help on these two major capital projects, it will actually bring our fund balance percentage up compared to how we ended 2020 at 21.29% to 25.73%. Which is still well above your stated goal of 18 to 20%. And then if you look at the 2020 actuals, you can see when you compare it to the 2019 actuals, you can see where our peer counties and across the state, the percentage of fund balance has gone up across the state. And then here just illustrates it more from 2013 to 2021, how the change in fund balance, whereas in 2013, we were down to 15%. And we're looking at 2021 to put us almost at 26%. On the expenditure side, similar to how we looked at it from the revenue standpoint, you can see on the pie chart here our breakdown of our expenditures. As you can see, based on your priorities, our top three have remained the same, with education, public safety, and human services leading the way. We did add a new group in here towards about 2/3 of the way down. You'll see transfer to project ordinance. That percentage makes up the two large capital projects for the DSS building and the Sheriff's Administration Building. I will point out that public safety did jump almost 2% from last fiscal year, and human services is up 0.5% from last fiscal year. Here's a mathematical illustration of the breakdown of those expenditures by grouping. Again, about 2/3 of the way down, you will see a transfer to project ordinance. Theoretically, that does sit in our general government category, but we felt that it was appropriate to break that out on its own. When you consider the large capital expenditure, it needed to sit outside of just the general government grouping. And I'm gonna turn it back over to Scott for education funding.
Thank you, Brian. Before we hit education funding, just did want to note that as the board is aware, it's proposed, following the board's desire and directive, that July 1, that the Pitt County Development Commission is collapsed into a Department of County Government. The 0.94 tax rate goes away. It becomes combined within the general fund tax rate. So the proposed tax rate that we had referenced earlier, the 68.41, with the reduction of half a penny, does include fully funding the new Pitt County Department of Economic Development. So in terms of education funding, the next area of this presentation, the long and short of it is the Pitt County Schools request. They had requested $42,963,624. Their request is being met in full. It's an increase of $1,805,813, represents a 4.39% increase. You'll hear more from Dr. Linker this week regarding their justification for the need for this. And based upon the growth in the base, both in the ad valorem, sales taxes and whatnot, we're able to accommodate this. These funding recommendations have nothing to do with the federal stimulus package that's still we're waiting on. The American Recovery Plan has nothing to do with those revenues. These recommendations are based upon the growth in our local base here and our resources here in Pitt County. For PCC, Pitt Community College, they had asked for $6,403,326. We're recommending all of what they asked for. The actual increase is $234,415. That represents a 3.8% increase in their budget. Again, you'll hear from Dr. Rouse later this week at the same day you hear from Dr. Linker. On the next slide, in terms of education, whether it's operations, capital, debt service, the total for education in all these categories, whether it's the current expense, capital 1, 2, and 3, and the rent at the $44.3 million, the amount of money going to PCC at 6.5, the school capital reserve at 6.7, Article 46 at 5.7, and school improvements 750 is a total of $64,087,829. I do want to note that as part of Pitt County Schools' request this year, that asked for about $4.8 million in deferred maintenance as part of the budget request that would have come before you as part of this package. And out of the Article 40 and 42 sales tax proceeds, because of the tremendous growth in sales tax revenues that we've seen, we are recommending in the budget, in the agenda package you have before you tonight, to go ahead and advance $2.4 million out of that revenue source in the county's budget or county's revenue coffers to allow them to proceed with that roof work. And we'll monitor that fund to see if any additional funds could be made later in the year. So that's a good news item that's even above and beyond the budget we're presenting before you tonight that is in your agenda. Moving on, for EMS District Fund, this is recommended by the Oversight Committee, maintains a current rate of 5.95 cents, continues the capital replacement plan, and it does implement the tiered funding plan that you approved in your last meeting based upon, I think, tiers 1, 2, 3, and 4, based upon number of transports. In terms of the next table, basically shows the revenues coming in, whether from the taxes on that 5.95 cents, the ad valorem taxes, the delinquent taxes, transports, Medicaid settlement. You can see where you got a recommended $6,946,447 million budget. And on this slide here, in terms of EMS expenditures, kind of gives the breakdown of whether it's the county operations. We operate 2 of the 10 squads. You see the 8 nonprofit squads. That's the remaining 8 of the 10 that are nonprofit, showing what you had approved in the first column for the current year, what they requested in the new year, what is recommended in the new year, then the revised recommended, totaling back to the almost $7 million total EMS budget. On the next slide, fire district. Within the volunteer fire departments, you do have 2 departments who are asking for a rate increase, Belvoir Fire Department and Sharp Point. If we go to the next slide, I'll break it out. Belvoir is asking for a 1.25 cent tax rate increase, and Sharp Point a 2 cent increase. You'll hear more from Randy Gentry, your emergency management director, when he presents later this week. On the next slide area, dealing with affiliate agency funding, these are our outside agencies that we consider affiliate. We kind of consider them that if they didn't provide the service, more than likely we as county government would be doing it as a department per se. Sherpa Memorial Library, we're happy to let the board know that the request meets the recommendation meets the request, fully funding the Sherpa Memorial Library this year. They'd asked us for consideration of 2 capital projects, one on HVAC replacement and a roof project, $75,000 and $20,000. We're recommending those, and those are coming out of one-time appropriations for those 2 projects. Council on Aging requested $250, $200, recommending that. The Pitt Greenville Airport Economic Stimulus Plan, we're recommending $80,000 this year based upon the activity that we're seeing with the number of aircraft that are being kept at PGV and then the quarterly payments that we share equally with the city of Greenville for that plan. In terms of sustaining agencies, these are different from an affiliate. These are agencies that we try to sustain going on. Community Crossroads is being funded at the same level, Drug Treatment Court at the same level, GPAC, Greenville Public Access Television, same level, and the Little Willie Center is the same level as current year. Total there is $69,685. Going on are the sustaining agencies, your libraries, Aden, same level, Bethel, same level, Farmville, same level. Fountain, we did not hear from. I think we had tried communicating with them on several attempts, but never received anything back from them. Grifton Library, same level, and the Winterville Library, same level, for a total of $30,000. The next area within sustaining agencies, Community Recreations and Parks remains constant with this year. So does Aden Arts, Farmville Community Arts Council, the Grifton Civic Center, Greenville Museum of Art, the Pitt County Arts Council, and then the last two are increases. One is the subnote under the Pitt County Arts Council for the Smart Art Program, increasing that from 5,000 to 10,000. The new one for this year is the North Carolina Museum of Natural Science at Greenville. They had actually requested this last year, $50,000 appropriation, because we were in COVID and we had budgeted very conservatively in terms of our revenues, whether ad valorem taxes, whether sales tax. You recall last year we didn't even do a cost of living for our workforce. We did not make it. There was no recommendation for the museum last year. This year we're recommending $10,000 of the $50,000 request, and this total area total $67,500. In terms of human resources, this budget allows for a 2.8% market adjustment recommended for 21-22. We go by the January to January CPI published by the federal government. The current CPI January to January is 1.4%. The CPI for last year, or the current year we sit in, which no cost of living was provided for the workforce, was also 1.4%. And so this basically is a 2.8% that makes that adjustment in the new year. On the next slide, position changes, we're recommending 28 new positions. And this was out of a total of, remind me, Brian, 49 and a half, 28 new positions, 3 sheriff clerk, 5 positions that were approved on April the 5th. These were actually a part of the sheriff's request as part of this budget. You did pre-approve those, allow her to move into those in the current year, but still consider those drivers in this budget. We did eliminate 1 position, so you had a net increase total of 30 positions in the budget. Again, 3 of those were what you approved on the 5th that, again, she asked for it in this budget process. Position changes, again, here you see the new position request, the 49.5, the total of all positions that were requested across the county. The new position recommendations within the manager's office, the community relations position for the Human Relations Council. Detention Center asked for 2 positions, and you'll hear from the sheriff on that. EMS asked for 4, Register of Deeds 1. The sheriff still has 3 additional positions that she would like the board's consideration on, and those are being recommended, as well as others she will be asking you about. Public health is recommended for 6. Social services is recommended for 10.5. They started at 19, or as you'll hear from the DSS director, they actually started at 32, brought 19 to us at the budget process. And then solid waste as an enterprise fund requested 1. So 28 there. In terms of the next slide, the calculation rates for our benefits in terms of retirement that is basically mandated by the North Carolina General Assembly. What we pay into it, we'll be paying 11.4% into, on behalf of each employee, into the local government employees retirement system. Law enforcement is a little bit higher than that. You can see the 401k that we provide for both law enforcement and all other county employees, life insurance, and then the hospitalization. It's important to note on the hospitalization that for the insurance participation fee paid by the employees is proposed not to change, whether you're qualified or not qualified. If you're qualified, you've basically had a health assessment, you've established goals for your health, and you're meeting, gaining points to get a certain number of points to qualify for that lower rate. If you opt not to do a health assessment and do a biometrics through the Blue Cross Blue Shield website, or not take classes or meet your health goal, then you pay the higher amount per month out of your pocket. On the next slide, classification study. This is a process that we continue in-house where we look at over a 3-year period, we look at every single position within county government, except for those, I guess, in health and DSS, which are actually state agencies that are under the purview of the state. But all other positions, we do a third of each class of employees. And the next year, July 1, we will be doing, Brian, public safety. So it'd be sheriff, detention, those type of positions that will be looked at. And at the end of that process, we're looking to make sure that we are competitive with the beginning salaries on the salary pay plan that we offer for those positions. So again, it's an ongoing rotation cycle of 3 levels employee classifications. Actually, clerical paraprofessional classifications were reviewed last, and there are no recommended changes from that study that HR has performed. On the employee medical insurance fund for basically health insurance, on this, the first line where it says employee, we're going from $695 to $710. That is what Pitt County government pays on behalf of each and every employee that receives the benefit of health insurance. That is built into the general fund expenditure side. That is not passed on to the employee at all. The remaining 3 lines, family, parent/child, employee/spouse, are optional coverages that an employee can opt if they so choose. Now that is going up, and there would be the additional cost out of pocket for an employee with that. And the last slide, employee medical fund, again, no employee participation fee changes, no change in the dental vision reimbursement plan, and there are no coverage changes within the overall benefit plan that is offered to our employees via Blue Cross Blue Shield. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Brian, who's going to discuss the capital improvement plan.
So on our capital improvement plan, we met back at the end of January. And at that point in time, you all essentially blessed us to move forward through the budget process with the projects for the upcoming 21-22 budget year. And we run all our numbers to see where we can make room and if there's an opportunity to do these projects. So what we typically will show you is what was presented in January, but we wanted to show you since January, based on our numbers, how some of the projects have changed in terms of amounts, funding source, and the year of which the project is going to take place. So for the sake of time, I'm only going to hit on the ones that actually changed since January. The first one being, in this case, if you look at the annual vehicle replacement plan, we had looked at $150,000. This would have been a cash funded year. And the other, it's a 3-year cycle, and the other 2 years of the cycle, we do look at a bank loan, but this coming year would have been a cash loan year. Based on our fund balance, we're looking at, instead of the traditional $150,000 cash amount, we're going to do the traditional bank loan amount, but we're going to fund it using our cash from the fund balance. The second item, if you'll look at, is the third item on the list, the Pitt County Office Building Renovation Plan. The dollar amount did not change. We were looking to set aside $100,000 to study the renovations of this building. We're just going to take it out of fund balance instead of current revenues. And then lastly on this page, if you look at our centralized phone system, we did reduce the amount from 300 to 200. And instead of a bank loan, we are looking at using fund balance to advance that particular project. On our public safety side, the very first item, the animal shelter, we're looking at the replacement of the dog kennels. And we had placed that on the CIP with cash. And based on the bids that came in April to complete phases 2, 3, and 4 of the animal shelter renovation project, this particular item was one of the alternates that was part of that bid process. So it's not necessarily recommended for 21-22 because we're going to include it within the completion of the animal shelter project. So we are doing it, but it's technically not part of next year's budget. Third on the list, if you look at the Sheriff's Administration Building, we have talked about this quite a bit through the presentation already. We were looking next year just to do, as part of a bank loan, $250,000 for design. and planning phase. And we decided based on our fund balance to take that entire project and to cap it at $6 million, which will include the design, which will include construction. And we are going to move that into its own project ordinance outside of the general fund. That way we don't have to reappropriate the money each year if it takes more than one fiscal year. So in a way, we are continuing the project and advancing it forward at the same time. Those are the only changes from the public safety standpoint from January. Under our category of economic and physical development, we had our inspection software at $375. We were looking at a bank loan, actually lumping that bank loan together with our telephone system upgrade, and we've decided to keep the amount the same at $375,000, but to take the money out of fund balance. On our human services group, if you look second way down, last board meeting, you got a presentation on the Smile Safari mobile unit. As you know, it's over 25 years old. So we decided to advance that program up. The project was going to be slated for FY 22-23, and we're going to move that $612,000 from fund balance and advance it into the next fiscal year. And then finally, at the bottom of the page, this is the other half of our major building expansion. This again, very much like with the Sheriff's Administration building, we were looking at doing $250,000 for plan and design work. We decided to cap the project at $6 million, take the fund balance and advance the project into its own project ordinance and to move it forward. On the education, nothing's changed since January. And then our final change is actually in our cultural and recreation grouping. We had talked about the gymnasium at Alice King Park. We have submitted a grant to the federal government. As part of that grant, part of that process, we do have to look at some design money. So we're looking to, instead of doing cash or a bank loan for this, again, we're looking at fund balance to help pay for some of that design money. And when we will address the grant, I believe in June or July, when we find out how that is proceeding with the federal government. On the environmental protection side, which is our solid waste, we did not make any changes from what was presented in January to what's in the recommended budget. As you can see, finally, in January, when you look at all of our projects, we were slightly under $6 million. And primarily with the advancement of the two building projects, that takes us slightly over $17 million.
And before we head on to budget highlights, I just want to ask Brian if he would assist me in, I guess, answering the question that you're probably asking in the back of your mind is, how did we get so much fund balance projected to June 30th, and how can we do so many projects cash funded? Brian, if you can explain the difference that we've seen in ad valorem property taxes, sales taxes, or residual CARES Act monies, and otherwise maybe to give the board a basis for knowing how fund balance is, what the COVID factor that has been applied to fund balance as well.
Sure. So if you guys go back to last year, we had no idea how this fiscal year was going to end. So it really starts there. I think the budget that we approved last year really, we went very basic. And I think by going very basic and making sure that we were able to cover those services that we're required to cover, that we were able to set a new base budget. With the idea of not knowing how COVID was going to affect us. We didn't know about the stay-at-home orders. We didn't know about sales tax. We didn't know the impact of not having students on campus. We didn't know if we were going to be locked down. So we went as bare minimum as possible. And here we are today still thriving. So we took that amount of expense into this budget year, and we've used that as the basis for 21-22. Through the miracle of folks staying in the county and not traveling, through the miracle of the folks over at the tax office being very due diligent in their work in collecting taxes. Our Register of Deeds has seen a tremendous amount of effort. Our buildings, if you drive around Pitt County, buildings are going up. Our economic development folks have brought a lot of opportunities and announcements over the last year. Basically, even during COVID, we've seen significant growth, not only in our base, not only in our tax discoveries, sales tax alone. If you can imagine, folks did not do a lot of traveling over the last year. And so a lot of that money that they would have spent, whether they were saving money, whether they were getting stimulus money, whether they were still working, they spent that money in Pitt County. And that amount of money provided a significant more amount than we could have ever imagined. And so we're want to utilize that amount to cash fund several of these projects. Also keep in mind that we did reimburse ourselves for the Warren Farm property. That is an amount of money that we can turn around and use. Also with the CARES Act, we were able to supplement several areas within our budget this fiscal year that we could, primarily on the salary side, that we can use CARES money, which thus freed up general fund money. So when you combine all of those together, just have an exceptional year from the revenue side. We do not see that as a direct indication of next year. If you want to put it from an analogy standpoint, if you look at it in sports terms, we made the playoffs this year. It does not mean next year we will. So we took that base budget approach. We were able to come together with some really good numbers. And then we were able to look at these projects, several of which that we have discussed in my 3 years here. We've always talked about borrowing money, and here was an opportunity to use some existing money to advance these projects along. So that being said, this is how we kind of come to the conclusion that we feel very comfortable even recommending to you all the advancement of these projects while decreasing the tax rate, while looking at some other areas that Scott's going to hit on the highlights. So overall speaking, we had a tremendous year. I've reached out to several of my counterparts across the state, and especially in our larger counties. Our medium to larger counties are all seeing basically similar results. So it's not just a Pitt County thing. You could say it's a North Carolina thing, but this year has been quite well, and we want to take advantage of that to advance some of these projects.
I hate to even make the comment, but you might be asking yourself in the back of your mind, well, why aren't we reducing the rate more than half a penny? That's because the experience on sales tax and some of these revenues we've seen, whether registered deeds and others, we cannot count on those continuing. We really believe it's been primarily a COVID factor, and thus that's why there's only a half-cent reduction on the rate. In terms of budget highlights, to kind of wrap this presentation up, in terms of what is fully funded, Pitt County Schools requests, Pitt Community College requests, Solid Waste Fund requests, and EMS Fund requests. In terms of the facility needs, we establish again the funding for the Sheriff's Office Administration Building, the DSS building expansion at the Human Services Center, the Pitt County Office Building Study to see what the future ability of this building is, whether it could be renovated and used efficiently or whether to be replaced. The Uptown Department relocation study, where once the sheriff moves out of the courthouse, that space as well as the other space that's downtown that will free up, how we will reallocate that for county needs. And then the design funding for the park at the gymnasium at the park, and then the public health medical records area renovation. Also, in terms of vehicles, we mentioned the Smile Safari mobile dental unit, and then the cash funding of vehicle increase from 150 to 650. Other items, again, this budget funds 30 new positions. You're going to hear a pitch from departments saying they need even more, and I'm sure they can justify it, but that we have no room in the budget at this point in terms of reoccurring revenues, and you need reoccurring revenues to pay for recurring expenses, i.e. salaries and benefits and such that go with it. We funded other items, the Sheriff's Office radios, the new inspection software that was pointed out, the new centralized phone system, Shepherd Memorial Library capital requests, all with a general fund property tax rate reduction recommendation. So from here, this week, we move, as we already announced, the workshops will begin tomorrow, the 4th, 5th, and 6th, 8:30 to 12. We've mentioned next week, if needed, public hearing June 8th at 6 p.m., alternate date June 21st at 6 p.m. And with that, Madam Chairwoman, that concludes the presentation for the recommended budget for fiscal year 21-22. And we'll be happy to take any questions, or if you want to dwell on this and think about it overnight and hit us in the morning, we'll be happy to do either tonight or tomorrow.
Well, thank you for the presentation, but I see Commissioner White's hand. Do you have a question tonight, Commissioner White?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just wanted to, I guess, maybe just make 2 comments or questions. Scott, from my understanding, was that a half-cent tax reduction that county staff is proposing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and it looks like, from my understanding over looking over the budget, that you were also proposing to fund Pitt County Schools request at 100%. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, that is great. That was my 2 questions for tonight. Thank you so much. I think that's wonderful.
Okay, I don't see any other hands.
Commissioner Colson?
Oh, I can't see his hand.
It must be a leftover from some time before, Scott.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Well, thank you. Maybe we'll have some questions tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to items for consent. First one, approval of the minutes. The last
Motion
meeting.
to approve.
Madam Chair, can we just motion to approve all of the items for consent?
Second.
Madam Attorney, is that allowed?
Yes, that's typically how you do it.
Okay, all right. It's been moved and second that we approve all of the items for consent. Are you ready for the question? Madam Clerk?
Chairwoman Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Albright,
He's muted.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Now move to items for decision. First one on the that section is NC 43 South Corridor Land Use Plan, and I believe Mr. Rose is gonna present this.
Yes.
James, your presentation is full screen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hopefully you can see my screen. Planning staff has been working diligently over the last month after hearing additional public comment and some comments from the board as well. So we wanted to bring back for your consideration tonight a revised land use plan. And it's not just the map itself. We wanted to fully acknowledge throughout the plan that there had been some changes. So with that, I'll give you a brief review of where we've been thus far. We did hold a public hearing back on March 15th. And after that point in time, we brought the plan back for further discussion at your April 5th meeting. As I've mentioned, we've been spending a fair amount of time going back through some of those comments. And tonight, we'd just like to share with you what we've done based off those comments. And what you have on the left side of your screen is the original plan. And most of you are familiar. What got a lot of attention was the area along Mills Road, just to the east of Hollywood's Crossroads. And this is Hollywood Crossroads right here. D.H. Conley is just adjacent to there. But this area in yellow, which was recognized as suburban residential, a lot of discussion. A lot of people felt like that just didn't fit into the area there. So what we've stepped back to do, recognizing that the county does not have control over or doesn't even influence the provision of sewer service, we've come up with the map on the right side of your screen. And basically we have taken from the county's planning jurisdiction any reference, taking out of that, any reference to suburban residential. So what you have now is this light green, which is rural residential and agriculture. And the darker green, as you get further down towards Chicago, is predominantly agriculture in and of itself. There is a small yellow area up north, suburban residential, that is currently within the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction and therefore is controlled by their land use planning regulations. So all said, we took one full step back and acknowledged that this area, while under the control of the county, would be more rural and agriculturally oriented. Also to mention, a major component of this plan, the whole impetus for us starting were a lot of these rezonings along the corridor itself. So what we really feel like is important for you as well as staff when you're dealing with rezonings are some of these areas that are rural commercial. And these are even as far south as you're getting down to Chicago Crossroads, but further up, we've had several businesses that wanted to locate right around the corridor, and our current land use plan just did not acknowledge that. There's also some expansion of the suburban commercial further to the north, and you've had several rezoning requests there. So with that, those are the maps. We've also, in your package tonight, you saw some of the language, about a page and a half of changes there. We want to be right up front with some of the changes, right in the acknowledgements page. And each one of these times you've probably seen that we've gone in just to recognize that the county did not control sewer service. Therefore, we were backing down from any reference to suburban residential and any dense residential type development there. So those are predominantly what you see. One other item on page 52, we did broaden some of the scope along the 43 corridor, basically in response to some of the rezoning requests you'd had recently, where if it's appropriate for small scale non-residential uses, we would consider those case by case through a conditional zoning request. So that provides staff some guidance. It also helps you and the public recognize what would be going in with those requests. Those requests would require a site plan and also identification of the type of business going in there. So here's just one example real quickly about some of the revised language. As I mentioned, we do acknowledge that some of these areas may be in the process of receiving sewer service. And if so, that warrants some type of annexation process through the city. That would take that land area, those parcels out of the county's control for zoning, and the city would then deal with that. But while it's in the county's jurisdiction, we would continue in a more rural pattern. So with that tonight, Madam Chair, we do have the motions before you. There's a resolution as part of your package. And just as a reminder, the planning board has also reviewed this and has recommended unanimously approval of this plan. So we've got the required language in the resolution as to when it would take effect. That would be July, as soon as possible, I'm sorry. And we would recommend approval of that tonight, as well as adopting that official land use plan map that would then be incorporated into our comprehensive land use plan. So with that, Madam Chair, welcome any questions you might have tonight.
Okay. Scott, I can't see hands, so.
Madam Chair, I have my hand raised. This is
Okay.
Lauren.
Okay. All right. Speak, please.
Mr. Rhodes, I just want to ask some questions that I know that that maybe they're obvious answers, but I just do want to go on record as asking these. Any future annexations by the city or any sewer plans currently in proposal now by Greenville Utilities, all over that, correct? Were you able to understand me? I know that my internet is really spotty with the weather tonight.
That last phrase I missed, Commissioner White.
Okay, any future annexations that could be on the board for the city of Greenville and any current sewer lines proposed by Greenville Utilities, the county has no control over that, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. My
In this
second,
area, yes.
okay. The next thing I have is just really a comment. I want to thank you and your staff for taking into consideration a new plan based on input from the community. The people that I have talked to today have been very grateful that we went from the suburban residential back to the rural residential, a lower zoning, a lower density zoning. So I do want to thank you for listening to those concerns and putting us back into a lower density zoning. I want to thank you and your staff for that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ward,
If there are no other comments, I would like to make a motion.
yes, please.
I'd like to move that we adopt the North Carolina 43 South Corridor Land Use Plan effective immediately and to amend the official future land use map in the 2030 Pitt County Comprehensive Plan Use Plan, Comprehensive Land Use Plan, to refer to the NC 43 South Land Using Plan, including the extended area influence shown on the proposed future land use map for all future development requests.
I'd like to second that, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Rose, do we need the resolution included in that motion?
That was part of the motion, the first motion, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve all of that Commissioner Ward said. Are you ready for the question?
Yes.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, Chairwoman Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Okay. Madam Attorney?
Yes, Madam Chair, on your next two items, you have the jail medical plan and the jail medical contract on for presentation by the Sheriff's Office. I would like to, at this point, before you hear those presentations, recommend, well, it is my understanding that with regard to the jail medical plan, there are further revisions needed to that document, and therefore I recommend deferring consideration of that plan until those revisions are received and reviewed by the board. On the jail medical contract, my understanding is that the sheriff is recommending a contract with WellPath, and that it will come back to the board for consideration of that contract on May 17th, once that contract has been reviewed by the sheriff's attorney and myself. So my recommendation there is to defer this item until May 17th as well. If you defer both items, no motion or action would be necessary by the Board of Commissioners tonight. And then I'd ask you to provide the sheriff an opportunity for her to agree or to speak or to let me know if I've missed it.
Madam Sheriff, do you agree?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we will move to the next, the budget amendment. And that's Brian, I believe.
Sale of county property.
No, we removed that from the agenda.
Oh, that's
because-
right. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, Madam Chair, Board of Commissioners, I actually have three in a row, so this is going to be the first one. The
Yes.
first one that you have is the Animal Shelter Renovation Project, phases 2, 3, and 4 for $300,000. This is what we kind of alluded to earlier in the budget presentation. Back on April the 14th, we did open bids for the second time, and we are going with Laughlin Sutton Construction They submitted the lowest responsive bid for a total of $1,377,408. $881,300 of that was for the base bid, and $496,108 was for all the alternatives. Based on the amount of money that we had set aside remaining on the project, we are asking for a budget amendment of $300,000 from fund balance to help to complete the rest of the renovation at the animal shelter. And this $300,000 will not put you in any type of negative impact on your goal of 18 to 20% of fund balance.
Commissioner Nunley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve budget amendment for the animal shelter renovation, project phase 2, 3, and 4. Are you ready for the question? Madam Clerk?
Chairwoman Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
yes,
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Brian, you're up again.
Okay, next you have in front of you a budget amendment for our retiree medical insurance reserve for $1 million. This one's going to take me a minute to kind of explain our situation. Back in 2010, the board then decided to set aside $50,000 a year to create a reserve for our retiree insurance pot of money based on our OPEB, other post-employment benefits, at that time as we were coming out of the 2008 recession. This reserve would help to fund any future retirement insurance issues that we were unable to pay. Currently, we do what's called pay as you go. So each year we budget an amount, and fortunately, we are able to pay that. Practice at that time, which I believe was a smart practice, was to set this money aside in case we needed it. Then in 2012, we had a large amount of fund balance in our employee health medical fund. And at that time, it was decided to move $400,000 of that into the retiree medical to help boost that reserve in the event that we ever needed it. However, from an accounting standpoint, we have not actually moved the money into the reserve. So what I'm asking tonight is a budget amendment for $1 million, because if you take $50,000 starting in 2010 plus the $400,000 from 2012, this year would have put us at a reserve of $1 million. We currently have $583,323 in what we like to basically want to call our retiree medical fund balance. And this would increase that by $1 million. This will help us in the event if we are ever short on our retiree medical. That is a liability that we have decided as an organization that we are going to fund for our folks who retire from the county. So I am asking for another budget amendment that should not have any negative impact on our fund balance percentage to properly account for the retiree medical reserve.
Commissioner Ward?
yes. I would like to make a motion that we approve this budget amendment as presented.
Commissioner Perkins Williams?
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we approve this amendment as presented. Ready for the question? Madam Clerk?
Chairwoman Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes,
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Brian, you up again?
All right, this is the last one, I promise, until at least next meeting. But last July, we started the process of looking at our Article 40 and 42 sales tax fund balance. We are required by law in the Article 40 and 42 sales tax to set aside a percentage for school capital and school debt. And last July, we decided to appropriate $4.8 million for deferred school maintenance. As we met with Pitt County Schools this year to go over their CIP and the budget process, they did present to us an additional list of facility needs, primarily on the roofing side, that totaled $4,854,255. That was part of their formal budget request. That is what they are presenting to their board. We as staff, based on where we are this year, being able to meet all of our existing obligations for Article 40 and 42 sales tax, we are recommending taking that 4.8 million and recommending half of that, 2,427,128, to be appropriated right now to go towards that $4.8 million in roofing. As again, this money is set aside, it's restricted for school capital and debt needs. So therefore we cannot use it for any other purpose. We do as staff feel like this will not have any negative impact on that particular restricted revenue. As we move forward, we just had the 2021 LOBS that's going to be paying a bulk of those annual payments. But we do feel at this moment that we can accomplish this and help the school system out.
Commissioner Ward,
I'd like to make a motion to approve this budget amendment as submitted.
Ms. Williams.
I second that.
It's been moved and second that we approve as presented. You ready for the question, Madam Clerk?
Chairwoman Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll move to number 8, appointment of the Home and Community Care Block Grant. Scott, you up?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, you have a recommendation to appoint Ramona Williams to this committee.
Motion to approve, Madam Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Ward,
Second that motion.
it's been moved and second that we approve the appointment of, I think, Ramona Williams to the Community Care Block Grant Committee. Ready for the question, Madam Clerk?
Chairwoman Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Last item, reappointment to the Farmers Market Policy Committee. Scott?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, on this item, you have a recommendation to appoint Mary Hardy to this committee and then also to reappoint Andy McLaughlin.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Ms. Mary Hardy and to reappoint Mr. Andy McLaughlin to the Farmers Market Policy Committee.
Commissioner Perkins Williams?
I second.
Okay, your hands are still up, that's why.
Oh.
Yep.
My paper laying on it. Let me put this hand down. I wonder why you were calling on me. Thank you.
It's been moved and second that we appoint Mayor Hardy and the other person to the Farmers Market Policy Committee. If a question, Madam Clerk?
Chairwoman Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. We're down to commissioner comments and committee reports. Commissioner Colson,
No comments.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
No comment.
Commissioner Albright,
No comment.
Commissioner Ward,
No comment.
Commissioner White.
Yes, I know that our budget workshop hasn't even started yet, but I want to thank our county staff for all their hard work and for being able to come up with a budget that is a 0.5 cent tax deduction and also funding our schools at 100%. That is awesome. I really thank y'all and applaud y'all for that.
Commissioner Nunley,
No comment.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
We look good on sales tax. I'm saying to all the residents, if you haven't got your vaccination, now you know you need to get it. Thank you.
Okay. I have no comments. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to it.
Ready to go.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we adjourn. Ready for the question, Madam Clerk?
Yes. Chairwoman Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner McGawhorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Good
Good night.
evening.
Good
Good
night.
night, everybody.